Hey everyone, welcome to Octagon Outlook here on the Line Movement YouTube channel. I am James Lynch. You might think this is the Line Movement betting show today with my two co-hosts, of course, Dan Levi, Dan Tom joining me here today. Happy to be joining forces with the triple threat. Gentlemen, how are we today? We're going to be previewing UFC Fight Island 8. How are you guys doing?
Doing absolutely phenomenal. It's an honor to be on here with you, especially after such a historic event and fight that we just saw with Max Holloway, the UFC's first time on ABC. We got the triple header, the triple threat. Let's do this, guys.
Yeah, let's get into it. Great to have you guys on here. Before, I know we got some people watching live. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. That way you won't miss any of the videos that we post every day. I posted an interview yesterday with Manuel Cape. Got Jimmy Rivera up this morning. We got the betting show on Thursday. There's a lot going on in this channel, so you guys make sure you don't want to miss any of that going forward. But before we get into Fight Island 8, Dan referenced it there. We had an incredible Fight Island 7 card on Saturday afternoon, the debut of the UFC on ABC, and it delivered. What a great card this was. A couple upsets, but we'll just talk about the main event. I mean, we have to. Max Holloway putting on a clinic over Calvin Kattar. I'll start with you first, Dan Levi. How surprised were you to see Max get such a dominant performance? Because I thought it would be much closer, and Calvin Kattar looked like a zombie on Saturday night. That guy can take some shots.
Oh my God. I mean, unreal toughness displayed by Calvin Kattar. I mean, they call him, he's Boston strong for a reason, right? And what's interesting about it is that Calvin Kattar actually broke some personal records. I mean, he landed the most strikes he's ever landed in a fight before. And on normal occasions, if he lands 133 strikes against anyone else in a 5-round fight, that's like a performance of his career type outing. But against Max Holloway, Max tapped into beast mode in a way that we've never seen before. I mean, in all our years of watching the sport, like we thought his output against Ortega was something we had never seen before. But this, I mean, he broke the record for most strikes landed in a UFC fight. So, man, did he remind everyone that, hey, he's still a force to be reckoned with. He deserves the next title shot. And it also speaks volumes to how dominant or how amazing the champ Volkanovski is, because they fought for 10 rounds and Max couldn't do anywhere near that. Despite who you scored the fights for, he didn't look like that against Volk. So there's a lot to unpack from that main event.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Volkanovski because I felt the same thing. I was like, granted, I didn't think Max looked different in this fight, but still, it just goes to show how good Volkanovski is. And, say what you want. He doesn't score the fights. I mean, the judges were the one that gave Volkanovski that nod in that last fight. So, I just think his stock went up. I think Holloway's stock went up. I think he's definitely getting the winner of Ortega and Volkanovski, which is going to come up in March, we found. For Kattar, I mean, what do you think is next, Dan? And also, I wanted to get your thoughts on the fight as well, because I think it surprised a lot of people just how dominant Max was in that fight.
It's tough for us to say his next because I'm honestly still trying to digest it. It was like a dream, you know what I'm saying? I picked Max, and I still felt silly for not picking him even more confident. Like that's the kind of performance that he put on. And speaking of a dream, I'm waking up and it's already Monday. I'm on my favorite Monday spot, which is Octagon Outlook. Again, make sure you like and subscribe to the video. So it's just an honor to be here. As far as what's next, though, it's really tough to say. I do hope with this whole, this whole Fight Island experience, they cram these fights so close together. The UFC schedule is so crazy. There's a lot that gets, lost, that gets swept under the rug that really shouldn't be. I think this is going to be a great litmus test because how could you forget about what Max Holloway did? I mean, if you were going to go in the beginning of a McGregor, fight, 3-fight week, essentially, which is what the UFC set up, you got to do something really big, regardless of whatever you think of that, Khabib dangled carrot news. You really got to do something big to stand out. And Max Holloway did it.
He certainly did. I think what's next for Kattar is time off. I don't want to see him rush back in there. I would have had no issues if Tyson Chartier had thrown in the towel a little bit earlier in that fight, even though, like I was telling you guys off air, I did have Max by decision, so it worked out well. But in general, I think you just need Kattar to take a step back from this one, really reassess. I don't know if, maybe going to a different camp, maybe trying some new things, because it certainly looked like he's not on that title level yet. I would like to see him against an up-and-comer. You've got a lot of killers right now coming up in the division with Bryce Mitchell and Andrade, who else? Ryan Hall. There's a whole bunch of big fights coming up here, and I think Calvin would be good to, maybe take a little step back and see how he would do against some of these up-and-comers. And for Holloway, like we said, it's likely going to be the winner of the Volkanovski and Ortega fight. Even if Volk wins, I think with the performance Max put on, I think you got to do a trilogy fight now just with how good he looked in his last fight, but we will see. where they go from here. But we got a card on Wednesday. That's why we've got the two best in the business here on Octagon Outlook here today. UFC Fight Island 8. I actually don't mind that they're putting, sort of 3 fights in there. I hope they continue to do this like they used to with International Fight Week. But this one's going down on Wednesday. Interesting time. Going to be on at 9 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're on the West Coast, you're going to be up at 6 in the morning watching this card. And for a guy like myself who's got to do interviews, it's going to be interesting to see how I sort of balance that. But we'll start in the main event. We've got Michael Chiesa taking on. All right, so let's get into this, guys. UFC Fight Island 8. We got Michael Chiesa, Neil Magny in the main event. I'm going to start with you first, Dan Tom. Which way are you leaning on this one with the fact that these are two highly ranked guys, pretty even matchup on paper, and the odds indicate that as well? How are you leaning on this one, and what are some intangibles we should be keeping an eye on in this welterweight matchup?
Well, my lean's going to be Magny, and not my Magny, actually, it's going to be Chiesa, and my pick is going to be Chiesa as well. I'm going to give that to you guys right here first. Basically, the intangibles, like I was kind of discussing with my man Dan Levy before our last betting show kicked off, peeling behind the curtain, if you will, was how Magny gets up. Now, against the cage, he tends to tripod and give his back. That's bad news for a guy like Michael Chiesa. He's long, strong, and knows how to use those clever controls. I mean, the man choked out Dariush, for goodness sakes, right? However, when looking closer, Magny's really smart, man. Like, even after getting dominated by Damian Maia, he started using that same half guard getup, which I think could serve him well, although Chiesa knows how to play off of that. The point is, I think that even though Magny is 5-3 against UFC Southpaws, it's obviously going to come down to the grappling. And the reason why I'm picking Chiesa to get it done, as opposed to Magny coming back and winning late, which is very possible, it's just that when I go back and look at Magny's career, guys, if you look at the people who beat Magny, it's mainly people who knew how to stay in their lane, whether their lane was leg kicks and striking like Lorenz Larkin or grappling like Damian Maia or Moraes. They stayed in their lane and they were able to power through and be better than Magny there. I do believe that Chiesa is the better wrestler and better grappler. However, the cardio edge, obviously elevation fight team up there, they're going to have Magny very prepared, but I'm actually leaning toward Chiesa to get it done in the earlier half of the fight.
Interesting. Dan Levi, where are you leaning on this one? Because one thing I'll point out, these guys are pretty similar. I mean, Magny's got a bit of a height and reach advantage in this one. They're both 33 years old. I mean, we're getting two guys essentially in the prime of their careers.
Yeah, no doubt about it. This is a tough one to call, guys. I mean, and that's the beautiful thing about it being a main event is that we don't really know who's going to win. It could go either way, and I love fights like that. I'm actually kind of leaning on the opposite way. I'm kind of leaning a little bit towards Neil Magny here. It seems to me like unless you're Damian Maia or RDA, and by the way, I know that, one guy beat RDA, one guy lost to RDA, but as we know, MMA math doesn't really mean anything. And also you got to look at when one guy lost to RDA and when one guy beat RDA. Magny lost to RDA in 2017. This was prior to, this was before RDA had to go through 5 rounds with Kamaru and Colby. Chiesa kind of got the remains. But that being said, it kind of seems to me like unless you're a Damian Maia level black belt, these guys gas themselves out trying to take down Neil Magny. And then when they get back up to the feet, the volume difference, the pace, that Denver elevation cardio is just something else. So I think that Dan Tom is right that the early going, I mean, look, Chiesa is going to take him down in the first round. I mean, we all know that. We can all agree on that. It's just what happens after that. Is the fight going to be over shortly after? Because I think if Neil can get back up, Chiesa is going to become increasingly more fatigued as the fight progresses. And I don't think that Chiesa has too many fallback options if the grappling doesn't work early. Whereas with Neil, I think that if he's dealing with a fatigue Chiesa, he might even be able to mix in takedowns of his own. But on the feet, that volume difference is huge. Like, I would be shocked if Chiesa got a knockout standing or if Chiesa won by any other path besides, getting this to the mat and getting an early sub. I'd be kind of shocked. Like, I don't think that he can do it for 5 straight rounds. So, but that being said, the 2 times that we did see Neil in the championship rounds, against Kelvin Gastelum in Mexico, by the way, he actually lost the 4th and 5th round. The 4th round against Ponzinibbio, that's when he got knocked out. So in those championship rounds, historically, he's struggled, but maybe 3rd time's the charm. We also haven't seen Chiesa in championship rounds yet. So I'm going to lean with that cardio advantage, that pace, that length, and that just nonstop output of Neil Magny to get it done here in the main event.
And I'm going the same way as Dan Levi here. I also like Neil Magny in this fight. A couple other things we didn't bring up. The layoff, Chiesa hasn't fought since January of last year. Magny's fought 2 more times since then. He actually fought 3 times last year, and he looked good in those fights. I mean, those were fights where you didn't know which way they were going to go, and Magny, came through in flying colors, especially that last fight against Lawler. I remember people saying Lawler's going to knock him out. That didn't happen. Magny went out there, put on a good performance against a guy that he idolized. He actually started MMA with Robbie Lawler, and the fact that he was able to sort of, beat his mentor, I thought was kind of cool in that. By the way, if you guys are watching, we do have interviews with Chiesa and Neil Magny on the channel here already. You don't need to watch anyone else. We got you covered here for the main event at UFC Fight Island 8. And one of the interesting things that Chiesa brought up in that interview was the fact that COVID is still, very restrictive in Washington State. He trains with his small group in, at Sick Jitsu in Washington State, getting to work with, Sam Cecilia and Austin Arnett. And then he mentioned going to Arizona and doing a camp up there with, I believe it was Tyler McGuire, a former tough teammate, getting to train a little bit up there. But if you're looking at the camps, I mean, Magny's has a way better camp to work with. He's getting to work with Justin Gaethje. He's getting to work with all these guys at Elevation Fight Team at Elevation as well. So the cardio is going to be good just being in Denver, and just the quality of opposition or quality of training partners, I should say, is another sort of feather in Neil Magny's cap as well. Whereas I don't think Chiesa got the best camp he could have possibly had. He even talked about it in the interview. He's like, look, normally a fight like this, I'd bring guys in. I just didn't have time. And with COVID, it was difficult. But Magny doesn't even need to do that because guys are coming to him. That's how good of a camp Elevation Fight Team is. So I know like Ian Heinisch is over there now. They've got Chris Camozzi. There's a couple guys that have come over to that gym. So I think that's another sort of feather in Magny's cap. And the other thing too with Magny, what was sort of happening earlier in his career, he would, get, tagged earlier, he'd be, in a lot of trouble, and he was able to overcome and come back and win these fights. I don't even think that'll be a factor here. And you talked about the grappling as well. I agree with you. If you look at Magny's kryptonite, it is getting submitted, RDA, and, some of these other fights. And Chiesa does typically wins his fight by submission, but I think Magny sort of worked on that. We haven't seen him really look like a fish out of water on the ground in the last couple fights. And I don't think, it's going to be a factor here. I think Magny, the fact that he's got championship experience, the fact that he's been more active, and the fact that he's had to learn from those hard losses like Ponzinibbio, whereas Chiesa really hasn't faced any adversity at welterweight. So for those intangibles and some of the stuff that Dan just mentioned, I am going Neil Magny here. But this to me, I was asked a couple of weeks ago what the closest fight was out of all the main events coming up. This has got to be one of them. I mean, if Chiesa goes out there and puts on an outstanding performance, would not surprise me at all. But I feel better about Magny just with what we've seen of him lately. And I think with Chiesa, there's a few things there that just kind of make me not want to pull the trigger on that one. So yeah, the pick's going to be Neil Magny by decision, by the way, because Magny doesn't finish a lot of his fights. I know it's 5 rounds, but maybe look at that decision prop for plus money. I don't know, but Neil Magny is going to be my pick for this one. All right. Let's get to the co-main event. We've got one of the few people who has beaten Colby Covington, Warley Alves, taking on Laziz. I think it's Munir Laziz. Either way, interesting fight in the welterweight division for the co-main event. I'm guessing they had this on the card in case there was a follow-up in the main event. That's the only explanation I have as to why this is the co-main event, because it's, it's a good fight, but maybe not the type of fight you'd want to see as a co-main event. But I'll start with you, Dan Levi. Which way are you leaning on this one between Alves and Laziz? We do have odds for this one, by the way. I think I forgot to mention that on the main event. But for this fight, we have Warley Alves as the underdog at plus 190 and Laziz at minus 238. So where are you going in this one?
It's a fantastic fight. I mean, I know that it might not be the biggest names, but in terms of action, this fight will deliver, gentlemen. And with Warley Alves, obviously, he's got the experience advantage here. I mean, he beat Colby Covington. He went the distance with Kamaru Usman. You look at some of the guys he beat, Alan Juban, some of the fights he's been in. And interestingly enough, when he won the Ultimate Fighter Brazil, a lot of people were talking like Warley Alves was actually going to go on to become a future world champion. Now, I know he's still in his 20s, and it's just one of these things where he goes so damn hard for that first round finish that when he doesn't get it, he tends to fatigue badly. And this isn't something that's been corrected over the years, because we saw it from his first fight to his last fight. I mean, his last fight against Randy Brown, at the end of the first round, he's literally on the mat, can barely get up. And he was dominating most of that fight. So I don't know what the issue is with Warley Alves. So, I mean, I know what it is. It's a cardio thing, but I don't think it's because he's not out here running his miles and not doing his sprints. I'm sure he's got a great strength and conditioning program. I mean, he's got that same coach that Anderson Silva used for all those years. I know Dan Tom knows exactly who I'm referring to. The big juiced up guy, or excuse me, big muscled up guy. That's Warley Alves' strength and conditioning coach. So it's not like he's not putting in the work. It's just like a pacing thing. He goes so damn hard. And with this guy, Munir Laziz, man, he blew a lot of people away in that UFC debut against Razak Al Hassan. incredible output, great takedown defense, a fantastic arsenal of strikes. He's long for the weight class. He's got this youthful spirit about him. And when you want to find out, okay, how's his ground game? Has he ever dealt with, someone like Warlley Alves before? So I went back and I watched some of his fights. In 2017, he actually fought a judo Olympian that trains out of Tiger Muay Thai. I don't know how to pronounce the guy's last name, Van Dijk or something like that. But either way, he fought this guy and he survived the early guillotine attempt, which I need to know because you guys know Warlley's got an unbelievable squeeze. So I know that Munir is not going to quick tap. I mean, this has got to be locked in for Munir to say no more. And I mean, he gets up from the takedown attempts and his offensive takedowns are getting better. I just feel like if he can just weather this early storm, I mean, the blueprint's been laid out on how to beat Warlley Alves throughout his entire career. He hasn't fixed those mistakes. So I got to go with Munir here just by having more output, a bigger variety of weapons, and I think he's going to win down the stretch. So I'm going to go with the favorite here, Munir Laziz.
Dan, Tom, you feeling the same way?
The line opened a bit closer, but obviously money coming in on Munir. I think everybody is figuring out something that, I've been screaming at the top of my lungs since UFC 198 that this guy fades Warlley Alves. I mean, you could just go look at a freaking pad session or a promo video that are short, non-hard, and supposed to make you look good. The guy can't help but check the clock. Like, it's something that's the reason why I cashed Brian Barberina and have cashed guys against him repeatedly and have targeted third rounds against Warlley Alves repeatedly. So I'll be doing that here again. Even though if you look at their bios, there's not a lot on Laziz. He's got the sports science trainer. He's a kickboxing trainer at the Team Nogueira version over there in Dubai. He's got the Desert Force Championship, but, he just looks like an in-shape guy. He's only been training since he was 21. He's 33, which is kind of crazy. I got to go back and watch some fights. I didn't go back and watch the one time he lost, which was a 5-round affair in Brave FC. I got to go refresh that. I also want to fresh to see how he looked in that third round, because again, I'm not just going to pick against Warlley here, but I'm also not just going to blindly fade him or take possibly overinflated prices. I'll let that for y'all to decide on what your bankroll or confidence is. But I got to look into it a little deeper. I'm really going to be looking for that third round angle, which I know not too popular. I'm not one to pound my chest for anything, much less something like prop plays that are so low percentage in this crazy game. But Warlley Alves is one of those cats where I'm always looking to fade late.
This looks like a bit of a trap to me. And the reason I say that is you brought up the age. They don't actually have it listed on Tapology, but you're right, Dan. He is 33 years old. So Laziz is actually older than Warlley Alves, which is kind of crazy to think how much more experience Warlley Alves has heading into this fight. Now, look, I'm like you guys. Alves, we know what he's going to bring. He fades. He tends to, have these fights that he should win that he ends up falling through. Like Randy Brown, that's a fight he should have won. James Krause is a fight he should have won, and he didn't. He got finished in both of those matchups. So I don't know how anyone can trust Alves at this point. But the problem is Laziz, I think it's one of those cases where, he had a good win in his debut, but he also fought a guy who missed weight, hadn't fought in a couple of years, and Razak Al Hassan, who, if you guys remember, that was a catchweight fight of 174 because Al Hassan missed weight. So I kind of feel like we might be looking at that win a little bit too much. Granted, even before that, like you mentioned in Brave, had some good wins, has a win over Sasha Panikov, who's also in the UFC as well. So, I mean, that's another nice win for him. But I just feel like for now, at least from my vantage point, I haven't seen enough of Laziz to say like, yes, this is a slam dunk thing to get it done. If anything, what's making me pick Laziz in this fight is just the inconsistency of Alves. So I'm going to take Laziz, but I do warn people in terms of betting this one. I think the value could almost be on Alves just because of the level of competition he's fighting. Like even Randy Brown, he's a guy that's still relatively young and still finding his footing in the UFC. It's not the worst loss in the world, but I just think this is one of those interesting fights because we've got an older guy who got a nice win in his debut, but I don't think there's enough there to show that it's an absolute slam dunk. He gets it done. Maybe I'm wrong on this one, but I'm going to pick Laziz. But I think if you're looking to bet this one, there could be some value on Alves because this could be the fight where he surprises us all and he actually looks decent. So
that's a great point by James, because it's funny because it opened a dead pick'em minus 115 aside. So the bookies were like, hey, public, why don't you guys decide who the favorite is? So at that pick'em price, I understand people taking Laziz there. It's just now minus 230, minus 250. There might be value on the opposite side because you guys know price is everything. So very good points.
Yes. So yeah, that's all kind of my warning there is just let's see what happens there in terms of the odds, especially closer to fight time. We'll see what happens with that. And let's keep it moving, though. We're actually going to get to our next fight in the women's flyweight division. Pretty interesting fight here between Roxanne Modafferi and Viviane Araujo. And if you look on blitzbet.eu right now, we've got Roxanne Modafferi is a pretty big underdog here, plus 270. Araujo minus 345. Do you agree with the line here, Dan? You know, Roxy trains in Vegas. I know you're at Extreme. She's at Syndicate. What do you think of the odds on this one, and who are you favoring in this fight?
It wasn't opened as a pick'em, but this is another fight that was lined a lot closer, but money is coming in on the favorite. And I think a lot of that is you're just fading Roxy, which is, I feel like she's had enough upsets to like scare people off, but maybe not. People are really, really confident in, what you think would be the younger fighter. But again, be careful. Viviane Araujo is 34 years old, no spring chicken. Again, I believe that age is even less condemning in the women's divisions. That's not a knock on the ladies. That's just as far as how that evolution curve works, both positive and negatively, right? However, it's something to keep in mind. But even though Roxanne Modafferi has all the experience, if you go look at their bio sheets from the UFC, I mean, you would think Araujo is the big experience from Japan. She's got, judo medals, Brazilian kickboxing, grappling, naga, nogi, all these things. Like she has everything there, the athleticism. But if memory serves, now I'm going to have to go back and watch a very crucial fight between Jessica Eye to refresh myself. But if memory serves, she can be, the pace can be suspect. And if you are positionally a good enough grappler, strong enough to get it to the ground. And
so did the entire card without realizing I wasn't live, and I didn't have anything recorded,
dude,
so I had to redo it.
If something happens to half the battle and protect your neck, something's up then.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. All right, let's get to a really important fight in the women's flyweight division. We've got Roxanne Modafferi taking on Viviane Araujo. Interesting on the betting lines. Viviane Araujo, one of the biggest favorites. If you go over to blitzbet.eu, you will see that she is right around minus 345 right now. The comeback on Roxanne Modafferi, plus 270. I'm going to start with you first, Dan. Tom, as a fellow Vegas resident like Roxanne Modafferi, is the line off here, or do you agree with the assessment?
Yeah, you don't have to inflate that line tonight, everybody, even though we all love Roxanne, right? She does her thing for money, and she might get that decision if the judges don't get it right. But I'm going to go with Viviane Araujo in that poorly sung out song. Yeah, no, I'm going to go with the favorite here, guys. But the odds that kind of James mentioned off the top, this fight did open closer like other fights we've talked about. Obviously, the public money comes in, and they decide that it's going to be this wide. Now, I'm going to pick the favorite. However, do not be surprised if this fight plays out closer than it leads on. I got to go back to watch that Jessica Eye fight. But from what I remember, we saw some suspect gas tank and susceptibility to control if you're positionally sound and strong enough to get those takedowns on Araujo. Roxanne Modafferi, obviously that's her game. Obviously she's improved her strength and conditioning, and she's also improved her striking. However, even though we could have a sweaty third round for Araujo after successfully having her bank two, I'm still going to go with the Brazilian here because this is in the big cage, guys. And Modafferi, a lot of her takedowns and a lot of the fights that she's gotten upsets in, they've been in the smaller cage. That's where she's thrived. She's thrived there in the smaller shows, right? Whereas I think the bigger cage, not just for Araujo, but all the other favorites that we've talked about on Octagon Outlook thus far, the stylistic favorability goes for the favorites there. The big cage is going to favor the favorites. In other words, I think it favors Araujo here, so I'll go with her.
Great point about the big cage, Dan. Tom, Dan Levi, are you going the same way here? Are you taking the Brazilian over the American?
Man, firstly, I got to give Roxanne Modafferi so much credit because I truly feel like she's one of the most improved fighters in that division. I mean, if you go back to 2010 to 2013, Roxanne Modafferi was considered a laughingstock of the division. Now she's top 10 in the world. So those kind of improvements, I got nothing but positive things to say. I tip my cap. I mean, how many times have people gotten burnt betting against Roxanne Modafferi, whether it's the Antonina Shevchenko fight in Russia, by the way, gentlemen, the Macy Barber fight, the Andrea Lee fight. She keeps delivering these upsets. And despite me mentioning these upsets, I'm going to still pick the favorite here, man. I like the athleticism of Vivi Araujo. I like the fact that she stands out. I mean, you don't often see one-punch knockouts in that division. We saw that in her UFC debut on short notice. The takedown defense is very on point. I love her footwork. I like what she brings to the table. I think she's going to win this one. I think she's simply more athletic and she can get it done. And I don't think the experience of Roxanne is going to override her in this spot. So I got to go with Vivi Araujo here.
And I'm going to complete the hat trick here, guys. It's a hockey term here on Line Movement. We should know that. And I'm going to pick Viviane Araujo in this fight. I do think the line is a little bit off. You know, Roxy's one of those fighters, like you said, Dan, where Dan Levi, I should say, I don't want to make sure we differentiate the Dan's there, where, you know, Roxanne, usually when she's in a spot like this, she tends to actually come through. The Antonina Shevchenko fight, right? She was a underdog in that one, ended up coming through. The Macy Barber fight, granted, Barber got injured, you know, ended up pulling that one out here. So this kind of looks at a little bit as well. But I do want to point out that Roxanne Modafferi has not had back-to-back wins since May of 2017. So consistency has been an issue. She's kind of like the Randa Marcos of the flyweight division, in my opinion, where she can't seem to put it together. But you do got to note the durability here with Roxanne. First time, she's actually not been finished since 2013 when she was on Tough and lost to Jessica Rakoczy by TKO. She's done a good job of that. So if the fight does hit the scorecards, which I think it will, there's a chance that Roxanne could maybe pull this one out. But I'm with you guys. The athleticism is the big difference with me here. I think Roxy's going to be a little bit slower, and the judges are going to look at that, and they are going to reward a decision to Viviane Araujo in this fight. I won't bet her currently as she is because I think that line's a little bit too steep. I might look for the decision prop instead. I think that's better value. Viviane Araujo has not finished anyone in the UFC so far. I think the same could bode here against Roxanne Modafferi, but I do like her. Younger fighter, more athletic. I got to like Viviane Araujo in this flyweight fight. All right, sticking with the flyweights, we're going to go to the men's flyweight division. We've got Tyson Nam taking on Matt Schnell. And right now on blitzbet.eu, we've got Tyson Nam as the favorite at minus 128, Matt Schnell plus 105. Dan Levi, we'll start with you. Which way are you going on this one?
So this is a tough one to call, guys, because I feel like there's two possible outcomes here. Either Tyson Nam's going to get another devastating knockout, but if it goes to the scorecards, I kind of see Matt Schnell having the more output and winning the decision. So really my big question in this spot is, can Matt Schnell make it to the scorecards? If he does, I think he's going to win. I mean, Tyson Nam doesn't have a good history with decisions. And the reason why is because he believes in his knockout power so much. He's knocked out so many people in his life. And I mean, this isn't just something, you know, recent with his two, you know, victories that he's had in the Octagon. I'm talking about back in the day against Eduardo Dantas. I know everybody remembers that big upset, even against Ali Bagotinov in Russia. So he's got the knockout power to put anyone away. We've seen Schnell knocked out more than once. It's just, can Schnell kind of outpoint him and make it to the scorecards? That's the big question. I'm going to lean with Tyson Nam here. I think that his power is, you know, it's good enough to where he can, you know, add another knockout loss to Schnell's record. But the thing is, again, if it goes to the scorecards, I'm fully expecting Schnell to get the decision, but I'm going to say that it doesn't. I'll go Tyson Nam via KO.
Pretty much feel the exact same way. I'll give you my thoughts on that in a sec. But Dan Tom, let's hear from you first. Who are you picking between this flyweight fight between Nam and Schnell?
Yeah, remember how I said that the big cage is helping all the favorites? That changes for this fight, guys. The big cage actually helps Schnell for the reason that Dan Levy put out. You know, I could easily see Schnell kind of dancing around, making it a frustrating fight to where there's not a clear winner, but the judges would give Schnell the nod because of more volume, which is historically Nam's kryptonite. Now, Nam, you don't expect guys to do this kind of later in their career because he's been around longer than people realize. This guy's been on the outskirts of the UFC for quite some time, okay? But he has actually stepped up his urgency, his pace, his corralling efforts. The problem is not so much the level of competition. It's not like some vast level jumps he's making here, but those all happened in the smaller cage, right? Where it was easier for a knockout puncher to corral his victim. He's going to have the bigger cage to work with, a much more footwork savvy guy. And Schnell, even though he's coming off of over a year layoff, he's one of those guys where you could make an argument that it doesn't hurt. Not only have we seen fighters really skill focusing during this pandemic era, but Schnell's a guy who is a suspect chin. So taking that time off, maybe not the worst thing in the world. Schnell also is a very experienced guy, more than his resume leads on. So it's not like he's still, you know, he doesn't know what sparring or fighting is like or getting ready for one. So I don't know if that's a bad thing. He's also training with Fortis MMA and has had plenty of experience training with a lot of big camps, Matt Schnell. So he's a guy that strikes me as being very active. Whereas Tyson Nam, he's in Hawaii, which is, you know, like California, one of the more stricter states in the United States as far as restrictions go, folks. However, Nam's had a relationship with the gym out there. He's got partners. He does coaching. He's pretty well established. So kind of like with the Chiesa Magny thing, it's like you could sit there and be like, this camp is better than this camp on paper, and I don't blame you. But in these pandemic eras, sometimes the smaller camp maybe is a little better. That familiarity, you're really not changing much. It's not like he was having to travel anyways for his camp. So really nothing kind of changes for Nam. And from a stylistic perspective, he kind of has to go out there and get the knockout, which is just both criticism and positive. Well, it's what this matchup calls for stylistically. So for that reason, I'll go with the favorite here, Nam, to find the knockout. But if it's a frustrating fight for 3 rounds, don't be surprised if you're sweating.
A lot of good points there, Dan. Tom, I'm glad you brought up about Fortis MMA. That was something I was going to bring up as well. We were going to see that in the last fight. We got to mention this fight's actually been rescheduled twice. So first time it was Schnell having a really bad weight cut. You remember they were almost about to weigh in, and then Schnell, they were just like, hey, you can't do it. Doctors wouldn't clear him, so he wouldn't go. I actually tried to get an interview with Schnell ahead of this fight. It doesn't look like he's doing any media outside of the UFC stuff. So take that for what it's worth as well. And then they rescheduled that fight to December last year, and Schnell withdrew. It didn't say why. I don't know if it was COVID or what the deal was, but so I mean, that you got to think here. I mean, Schnell's coming off a knockout loss, a brutal loss that happened in the very first round against Alexander Panchoa. And then with Nam, he's coming off 2 straight knockout wins. And you're right, Dan, the bigger cage does favor a guy like Matt Schnell here. And I agree with Dan Levi in that I think the longer this fight goes, that favors Schnell as well. But the other thing we didn't talk about is that Matt Schnell's got a pretty good ground game, right? A lot of those wins that he had before the Panchoa fight were submission wins. He got back-to-back triangle choke victories over Louis Smolka and Jordan Espinoza. Tyson Nam, believe it or not, guys, through 32 career fights, has never been submitted. So I don't think that's going to be an issue for Tyson Nam in this fight. And if Schnell can't submit him, I think in this fight stays standing, a clear edge goes to Tyson Nam with his knockout power. Even though it is a bigger cage, I think Nam's still got that in his back pocket, that he's got, those hammers for hands. So I'm also going to pick Tyson Nam in this fight, but I almost think you could almost hedge it. I kind of agree with what Dan's saying here, where if you wanted to, maybe figure out the money and all that, you could take Nam inside the distance or by knockout as one of your props, because I can't see Nam winning a decision. He's just not a decision guy. Like, he loses decisions, if anything. So I would take either Nam by knockout, and then I'd maybe hedge that with Schnell by decision, because I think if he does win, it's not going to be by submission, like I said, because Nam's got a good ground game or good ground defense, and I don't think she's Schnell knocking him out. That's not happening. So, and the other thing I got to mention, Schnell's taken some damage in his career. Remember, he had to go up a weight class to fight Rob Font. He got knocked out in that fight quickly in the first round. Also got knocked out by Hector Sandoval as well. So this seems like the type of matchup that Tyson Nam is going to thrive on and get the victory here as well. So I'm taking Tyson Nam by knockout. Does it happen in the first round? I'll go second round. I think he gets it done, but really big fight for the flyweight division. All right, last fight on the main card we're going to break down here. Lerone Murphy taking on Douglas Andrade. And right now, the odds makers have Lerone Murphy as one of the biggest favorites. Actually, he is the second biggest favorite on blitzbet.eu. If you look here right now, he's at minus 312, third favorite. I forgot about Vivian Araujo, but Lerone Murphy minus 312. The comeback on Douglas Andrade Silva is plus 245. Dan, Tom, who are you going with on this one?
Man, I feel like it's easy just to say the favorite and walk away and leave it at that. But Douglas da Silva Andrade, this guy's no joke. He's like a John Lineker light. I like that he's moved back up to 145, even though he's small for the division. He's all muscle if you've seen this guy. However, I think his game's pretty rote by now, and you know what you're dealing with. And Murphy, a guy who actually comes from the striking savvy side of things, and has really shown an underrated game as far as his wrestling, his in-fight IQ, and his kind of well-rounded game. I really like it, man. I was watching some Murphy footage last night, and he was reminding me of the fight we just talked about at the top of Octagon Outlook, guys, recapping Kattar and Holloway. I think so many of us technical nerds got excited for Kattar and Holloway. It's because you're looking at all the shifts and all the intricate striking they're doing. And I'm watching this guy Murphy, who's, a young kid, especially if we're going by his UFC experience. And he's doing a lot of these smooth shifting stances, a lot of subtleties that I think could be missed. I really like Murphy in this spot. As long as he fights smart, I think he can get it done any way he wants to. But Douglas da Silva doesn't go down without a fight, so I wouldn't be surprised to see it go by decision. I don't know if I'm going to nail it quite yet, but I'm thinking Murphy by decision, and we get a good look at this kid's skills.
Dan Levi, do you agree here? Are you going with the heavy favorite in this one, or do you see some dogs barking on this fight?
Look, if it was in Brazil, then I might see some dogs barking here, but it's not. Historically speaking, Douglas doesn't do that good outside of Brazil. I don't know what it is. So this fight, I mean, that flight from Brazil to Abu Dhabi, I got to Google it, but I'm assuming it's a hefty flight. And that kind of stuff mixed in with the fact that he's not even fighting in his proper weight class. The guy's a bantamweight, not a featherweight. I think he's too small in this spot. I'm not going to discredit his record because you look at it on paper, 26-3. That's an amazing record. But I mean, guys, I think we've seen in the UFC what the deal is. So they're trying to set up their prospect Lerone Murphy here. He's been so impressive. I mean, he goes from not fighting the best competition outside the UFC to going to a draw with Tukugov in Abu Dhabi, by the way, and then smashes Ricardo Lamas. I think he's the real deal. I'm going to go with the Brit here, Lerone Murphy.
Yes, I'm with Murphy on this one as well. I do want to mention, though, Andrade, we got to point out the level of competition here. You look at his last two losses, Petr Yan and Rob Font. I mean, we're talking about two of the top bantamweights. Granted, it's a different weight class, like you guys mentioned, but still, I mean, losing to those guys isn't terrible. And he has a win over Chito Vera as well, which we got to point out too. His last fight wasn't since November of 2019 when he beat Renan Barão. We know Renan Barão is not what he used to be. But still, that is one thing I did want to point out here. But yeah, this is Murphy's fight to lose. You can see what the UFC is doing, like you guys mentioned. They want to build up their prospect. Murphy, I thought, looked outstanding in that last fight against Ricardo Ramos, another prospect they've been trying to build up forever. It hasn't worked out. But yeah, I like Murphy a lot, especially if it stays standing. And the other thing with Andrade that bothers me is just his lack of fighting. Like, I think we forget that Andrade has been in the UFC since February of 2014. He's just only fought a handful of times because for whatever reason, he's not in there a lot, whereas Murphy's been a lot more active. That's another reason to like him in this fight. This is Murphy's fight to lose. I think the big question is, can he finish this fight? You saw Petr Yan and Rob Font finish him. I think it's possible as well. So, like I said, you know me, I'm not big on the huge favorites here. Maybe if you want to parlay it, maybe. But I think maybe the inside the distance prop might be worth looking at what Murphy and can do with his striking. So I'm going to pick Murphy. I think he gets it done, and I think he passes this with flying colors on the main card. All right, we got to talk about one important fight on the prelims because I have an interesting take on this one. I'm curious to hear what you guys think. We've got Omari Akhmadov taking on Tom Brees. And right now, if you go on blitzbet.eu, we actually don't have odds for this fight, but I'm seeing on a lot of books that Brees is the favorite. So I'm curious about that. We'll start with you, Dan Levi. Should Tom Brees be the favorite here with just a couple fights at middleweight?
It's a great question, man. I mean, this is tough because Brees has all the talent, all the athletic tools. It's just sometimes he doesn't always perform how you want him to. And I got to give the guy a lot of credit. He's very brave to be open about his struggles with anxiety and all that. So nothing but respect for Tom Brees. But the thing is, you know, he's not fighting KB Bueller anymore. He's fighting a scary Russian now. And we know how Tom Brees historically reacts when he's fighting UFC caliber guys. I mean, the Sean Strickland fight, the Brendan Allen fight, even the Ian Heinisch fight, which was supposed to happen, but after the face-off, he was like, no, thank you. And that's not disrespect. That's just what happened. So he wins the fights he's supposed to win. And I say that he's the favorite here. I don't know if he can beat a ranked guy. I know Omari tends to gas out in a lot of these fights, but we got to understand that, I mean, against Marvin Vettori, who's number 5 in the world, they went to a draw. Against Chris Weidman, we can say all we want about Chris Weidman being washed up, but the fact of the matter is Chris Weidman never lost his wrestling credentials. Chris Weidman's still a D1 All-American. That's something that Tom Brees isn't. And Chris Weidman, even in the fights that he loses, he tends to not only win the first round, he gets takedowns in every single fight, win, lose, or draw. So to me, I can't hold that against Omari Akhmadov, especially considering that Tom Brees is not going to take him down. So Tom Brees' path is obviously with his sharp boxing. He's actually got a very underrated leg lock game as well. I just see Omari kind of, you know, coming out here, landing the harder shots with those big bombs, mixing in takedowns, winning 2 of the 3 rounds, winning the first 2 rounds, gassing out in the third, but not getting finished in the third. I got Omari via decision.
Interesting. Dan Levi with the upset there. Dan, Tom, do you agree, or do you like the favorite in this spot in Tom Brees?
You know, I've been a big Tom Brees fan, a big a defender of his, but even when people were high on him, I was always quick to remind you, this guy's got some excellent game and leverage off of his back for a tall guy. If you watch any of his Bama or Cage Warriors regional stuff. That being said, man, I love me some southpaws as well. And again, hats off to the guy for admitting what, he's had to, go through, which is why he's had so many withdrawals. If you look at the old Tapology record, right? That being said, I do like Akhmadov here. I'm surprised to both see him opened as a dog and money come in further, inflating this line. Not by much, but this is another line that the public has moved, folks. So I'm actually going to go with Akhmadov here. I know he's coming off of a big letdown in that Weidman spot, but like Dan said, it's as hard as we want to be on Weidman. It's not like Weidman, doesn't have this amazing base and amazing proven record inside that octagon. And if you look at his TKO losses or his losses at welterweight. You got to understand that this guy shouldn't have been fighting that low. Like, I saw this guy at the lobby at UFC 223 standing next to like UFC heavyweights, and I couldn't tell the difference. Like, that's how big Akhmadov is. I always quote Julian Marquez. Oftentimes, folks, UFC middleweights are heavyweights who cut an insane amount of weight. That's all that is. And Akhmadov fits that bill. I could totally see him banking 2 rounds and then having a gas to survive. The problem is, I don't think that unless Brees has a good start and can keep that ball bouncing, I don't think he wins this fight. I think as soon as he shoots a takedown or hits a hard counter or shoots a takedown, gets stuffed, and then Omari counters him off the break, I think one of those hard shots is going to change the trajectory. Not that Brees has a suspect chin and it takes one shot to put him out. I just feel like it's going to take one of those hard shots, and we're going to see that snowball start rolling downhill. So I'm going to take Akhmadov here. I'm really kind of surprised at this line. Curious to see where it goes.
I'm glad to see you guys are not making me crazy here, because I thought the exact same thing when I looked at the betting odds. How is Akhmadov the underdog here? Way more experience at middleweight. Tom Brees, I think it's a case of recency bias. I really do, where, he beat KB Bowler, a guy who hadn't fought in 2 years, was supposed to fight on the Contender Series, gets the last minute call up and gets finished quickly. I mean, it was an all Brees in that fight, but I think people are putting way too much stock into that win, because the fight before that, like Dan referenced, he got absolutely destroyed by Brendan Allen. I mean, Brendan Allen's a good middleweight, but I mean, that's not like, that should have been a lot more competitive, and it certainly wasn't. So I really like Akhmadov here. That Weidman fight, even, I mean, there were moments in that fight where it looked like Akhmadov was potentially going to, beat Weidman or at least turn the tide here, but he just couldn't handle the wrestling. But even before that, he has that win over Ian Heinisch. I mean, how good does that win look now with what Heinisch did, has done since then? And, I think Heinisch has got that fight coming up with Kelvin Gastelum. Like, that's a great win. All of his wins have been pretty solid at middleweight. And you look at, I'm glad you brought up the stoppages. They've all been at welterweight, where he's more susceptible to the knockout anyway. So I don't think Brees is going to go out there and storm him. The only thing that is a concern is that Brees does have a bit of a height and reach advantage in this fight. Brees is 6'3" with a 73.5 inch reach. Akhmadov 6 feet tall with a 73 inch reach. Actually, only a 0.5 reach. It's just the height, I guess. So yeah, but even that, I don't think it's going to matter. I think Akhmadov grinds his way out to a decision. I think he makes it dirty. I think he takes away Brees's weapons, and I think he pulls off the upset here. And guys, I'm telling you, I mean, maybe I'm off on this one, but I got 2 co-hosts here who are agreeing with me. I think there's a lot of value here on Akhmadov as the underdog. I don't get why he's put in this spot. I think it's a case of recency bias. Maybe I'm wrong on this one, but I feel pretty strongly that Akhmadov gets a job here at UFC Fight Island 8. I think he pulls this one off and gets back on the winning track as well at middleweight. We're looking at the rest of the card here. I want to throw this to you guys. Is there any other fights on this card you guys wanted to talk about? We've got, there's a whole bunch of good fights. There's the bantamweight fight with Jerome Rivera and Figueroa. We got Mike Davis and Mason Jones, the double Cage Warriors champ. Any other fights on there you guys want to just quickly talk about? And maybe we can get some questions here as well. I'll throw it to you first, Dan. Tom, little on the spot action here. Is there any other fights you're interested in talking about here?
I'm looking to see if Sumaderji is really worth the minus 450. I'm picking him. Obviously, I get why he's inflated that high and even opened high. But just seeing that kind of a kid put things together, people were comparing him to like that. Wow, he had that almost like, and I hate to say it because it's of the theme, but the Conor McGregor feel. That long flowy stance, and he's also been doing groundwork with a lot of guys that I know right here in Las Vegas. I'm not sure for this camp specifically, but Sue was around here at Extreme Couture in 2020. Working with some really good guys, small guys within his weight class, who I respect. So,
yeah, I want to quickly touch on that fight as well. How is Adashev, is that how you say it, in the UFC? He's got a 3-2 record. Like, you just never see that unless it's like a short. Well, I know it was a short notice, I think, for him last time, but like, this looks like a setup fight as well, where they're trying to build Sue up a little bit, because I just don't see how this other guy wins. He's, he's a little bit older. I think he's got if you look at Sue here, he's got, I think, height and reach advantage in the fight. Has some losses, but he's bounced back. That win over Malcolm Gordon. Malcolm Gordon's a guy I've been following forever on the Canadian scene. That was a good win to finish him in 44 seconds. So, this looks like another fight where it's like, I don't really get the matchmaking here unless they just want to make Sue look good. Dan Levi, do you have anything to mention on this fight? Because I just don't think Adashev is UFC caliber with a 3-2 record.
Yeah, you see a 3-2 guy fighting Sue, and it's like, what's going on? He does have a 16-3 kickboxing record, so he's better than his record indicates. But in MMA is a different sport, so you got to go with Sue. The Chinese Connor, he's very long for the weight class, beautiful straight left. I like this kid a lot.
Yeah, and Adashev getting knocked out in 32 seconds by another guy we talked about earlier, Tyson Nam. So, yeah, I mean, granted, bad style matchup, but this looks like another built-up fight. Dan Levi, any fights on here you're looking on the undercard that you're interested in, that you want to dissect a little bit?
Sure. The fight between Mason Jones and Mike Davis. Davis obviously man, he's been fighting a killer's row. He fought Sodiq Yusuff on Contenders. Got 6 million views, by the way. He fought Gilbert Burns in his UFC debut. Now he's fighting the Cage Warriors double champ. And you guys know the guys from Wales have been producing. Look at Jack Shore. He's undefeated in the UFC. Brett Johns had a great run in the UFC. Then I know there's guys like Marshman and Phillips, but what I'll say is that Marshman and Phillips are 85ers, and Mason Jones is closer to the weight of a Jack Shore and a Brett Johns. So I expect him to perform. I expect him to come out here and perform. But the thing is, Davis is a freak athlete. He's got serious boxing. He's got wrestling as well. He's fought a higher level of competition. So for Mason to get this upset, it's not going to be smooth sailing. He's going to have to weather a serious storm if he is to win this fight. So I agree with Davis being the favorite here, and there might actually be some value on him. Vegas was saying -300 Davis. All the public action came in on Jones here. Now you're seeing Davis around -160 in some spots. So might be worth a look. I'm not saying the Cage Warriors double champ ain't the real deal, because he is, but the athleticism difference here is huge, my friends.
That's one of those things, right?
Yeah, sir, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, sorry,
Tom.
I was just going to say that's one of those things, right? I agree with what Dan Levi said, but when you have these guys from Wales or England or Ireland, those countries tend to back their fighters at the bank at the betting window, right? So you have to decipher: is that money coming in because the line was open too wide, or is that money coming in because it's biased money and you're getting a discount on Davis? That's the question you got to ask, right?
Yeah, and what's up with them giving these Cage Warriors fighters these hard fights? Like, remember Reese McKee had to fight Hamzat Chimaev. Like, what are they doing? Like, to me, Mason Jones, you got an undefeated double champ from Cage Warriors. Maybe give him something a little bit easier for his debut, but I guess that's the UFC. Yeah. It's one of those things where I don't really get the matchmaking here, unless they're just trying to say, hey, are you that good of a prospect? Let's come up against one of our guys there. But yeah, Mike Davis is a threat, and we can scratch that Gilbert Burns fight off the the top, because that was a death sentence, getting to fight him in your debut right on short notice. Nobody can have much success fighting Gilbert Burns on short notice there. But yeah, that's a fight I think is going to be the sleeper fight of the night. That's awesome. Not sure why that one's on the prelims, but maybe they want to get some extra TV time there as well. Anything else you guys want to chat about on this card? We can go to the chat. If you guys have any questions in the chat, let's hear them. As long as they're all good and nothing crazy here in the chat or whatever. Anything else you guys want to talk about on the card?
Obviously, we got.
Anyone...
Oh, go ahead, Dan. Tom.
Dan. I was going to say, I was curious what anybody has in the chat and shoot it our way, but go ahead, Dan.
2 fights I'm interested in. Obviously, the debut of Davison Figueiredo's brother, Francisco Figueiredo. Oftentimes with the brother tandems, they can be hit or miss. You got cases like the Pettis brothers, where both guys were fantastic, but then you got cases like the Miller brothers, where Jim is a UFC Hall of Famer. Dan won a couple UFC fights, but not like Jim. So I'm curious to see if Francisco, if he's this hidden talent, this gem that we haven't discovered, or if he's just a favorite here because of his last name. And then also Dalcha Lungjambula dropping to 185 against Marcus Maluko. No matter what happens in that fight, it's going to be very, very exciting. Those two always bring it. So yeah, guys, those 2 fights for sure.
Is the Dalcha fight at 85? Because they have it on Tapology as 205, unless they made a mistake. That's
yeah, I think they made a mistake, because Dalcha, he was supposed to fight this other guy who's only fought at 85s, and Maluko's never fought 205. He's actually a former welterweight himself, so I'm pretty confident Dalcha's dropping to 85.
Well, yeah, and he was supposed to fight Carl Roberson, who's a middleweight as well before that. Exactly. So I think you're right about that. Tapology, I mean, they rarely make mistakes. I love Tapology, but yeah, that's might want to get that fixed up. Dan Tom, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, I believe Dalcha is fighting in 185. He's been working a little bit at Extreme Couture, I believe, and I think I saw him pop up on some of the socials, and he looked a bit tighter. It's always hard to tell. Like, I didn't realize Tafon, was dropping down until he hit the scales. I was like, what the heck is going on? So who knows with these guys? I was going to say that Dan, you're mentioning Dan Miller. I was thinking of Dan Lozon, and I'm like, when is Dan going to be the A-side brother in MMA, huh? When is that going to happen? When are we going to have our day, Dan? I don't know.
All right, we got a couple questions in the chat here. We'll start first with Josh, who says, what is your best bet for the card? From my perspective, I think anytime you can get dog money on someone who shouldn't be a dog in Akhmadov, I think that's the play there from my perspective. Is there anyone you guys are looking at in terms of some of the bets, whether it's a prop bet or straight bet? Is there anything you guys are looking at? I'll start with you, Dan Levi. Anything you're looking at on here that you think could be good value?
No, I think that James pointed out a great dog in Akhmadov. I personally think Mike Davis should be a little bit bigger of a favorite. I could be way off. Mason Jones might come out here, prove me wrong. And then I think there's some worthwhile parlay pieces as well. Make sure y'all check out my parlay pieces article dropping soon for line movement. So yeah, there's spots all across the board. Just got to dig into it.
Dan, Tom, anything you're looking at here?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a couple prop looks that may or may not appear on my line movement MMA betting show. I also see some parlay pieces, things I like. If I like it enough, they'll make it on there. I try to stay away from that, because Dan Levy does such a great job with his parlay pieces article that come out, every fight week, or for every event, I should say. Right, you're getting extra content over there on linemovement.com this week. Of course, there's gonna be some mention of Akhmadov maybe in there, and I like some betting angles or possible betting angles that I'll break down there in the main event and co-main event as well. I think there's some angles there that are sexy depending on what side you're on. Again, I'm not going to try to sell everybody on my side. I'm just going to tell you what I think looks good, and you can kind of act accordingly from there. But there's some tasty stuff for a card that's that's the lowest key of the 3 fight offerings. There's some stuff here that's worth looking at.
I want to remind everyone, if you have a day job, most of you are working remote, just make sure you got that second screen going at work. A lot of production not getting done on Wednesday because this is an early morning card, 9 a.m. Eastern time for this one. So you guys got to be up a little bit earlier to check this one out. But it is a pretty good fight night card from top to bottom. As we're about to sign off here, Dan Levi, where can people find you on social media? We got Half the Battle coming up as we do every week. We got the Line Movement Betting Show that you and Dan Tom do every Thursday. I imagine that's a 257 preview. What's going on in your world as we're about to sign off here?
Well, firstly, James, thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure being on podcast with you. For the fans that don't know, James was actually on the first ever episode of Half the Battle back in 2015. It was when Conor was going to fight Chad Mendes. So it's cool to be reunited here on another, Conor McGregor fight week. And the fans can follow me at Best Fight Picks. I'm available at bestfightpicks.com. My show, Half the Battle, is available everywhere podcasts are found. And then also the Line Movement MMA Betting Show with my co-host, Dan Tom, is available as well on Line Movement. So thank you guys again, and I look forward to speaking soon.
And Dan Tom, one of the best analysts in the game. I always mention this on my podcast. You can find his work on MMA Junkie, the Protect Your Neck podcast, and of course here on Line Movement on the betting show as well. Did I leave anything out, Dan? I feel like I could be your, your lawyer or something. I don't know.
You could, man. You're way too kind. You're overdue to make another guest spot as well as Dan. We all go back, and as Dan Levy's exciting time, man. Boy, does time fly. I guess the only thing I'll add is, since y'all are, I assume, watching us on YouTube because we are giving you amazing content that you should have already liked and subscribed, maybe go to the Daniel Tom MMA and give my channel some love there, bringing you guys content there as well. And also going to have links to the videos we do over there because our producer, Jordan, he's been helping me and showing me the YouTube ways. So I'm a little slow at it, but as a family, we can come together and make us all stronger.
Awesome. And for me, guys, at Lynch on Sports, I do Octagon Outlook every Monday here on the channel at 1:15 p.m. Eastern time. You can also find my interviews on there. Like I said off the top, interviewed Manuel Cape, interviewed Jimmy Rivera. I got some other big interviews coming up this week. So make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We do the show every Monday. Like I said, appreciate the support, guys. This was a lot of fun. We got to get the Dans together again more often. This was a lot of fun here today. Hope you guys enjoyed this show. Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy 2 cards this week